I suppose the work I do in mental health keeps me the most busy. I work for the Institute of Psychiatry. I deliver the carer's perspective on 3 short courses: medication management, dual diagnosis and enhanced skills. And then I go back up there for the exam process, and they actually employ an actor who plays the part of either a young man or a young woman. Sometimes it can be an actress, and they have to play the part of someone with either bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. And the nurses will assess the patient in front of myself and the senior lecturer with a camera rolling. Every 20 minutes it will be a different nurse, so that goes on. We normally do 7, 8, sometimes 9 in a day. It's very, very tiring. And they have to assess the patient, and my job is to watch out for their interpersonal skills. You know, do they make eye contact? Do they come over as compassionate? Do they sort of let the service user, or the actors playing the part of a service user, do they let him make his own decisions, or do they try and sway him from, you know, what he wants to talk about? All that sort of thing is what I do up there. I also work for Christchurch University in Canterbury, South Essex Partnership Trust. Actually, South Essex Partnership Trust is how this all came about, because Patrick Geoghegan, the chief executive, read the first book I wrote about my son who suffers from schizophrenia, and said, will you come and work for me? And I've been doing that for about 10 years now. And there I talk to all the intake of staff, part of the staff inductions, and I do that once a month, so that when the staff come into the trust they've got an idea of what carers go through. I've also talked at a lot of conferences nationally. I'm a media volunteer for Rethink, and I did a fellowship for NIME, National Institute of Mental Health. And people ask me why, you know, why have you got so deeply involved in mental health? And one, I've had a mental health problem myself. I still take antidepressants now, and I'm 64. I've been on medication since I was about 18. And then my son developed schizophrenia at the age of 16. And that's when I started to write the books after a few years, and I've written 5 published books. 4 of them are about mental health caring. Okay,
what have you learnt? What do you think you learnt, say, in the last 10, 20 years on what about mental health, and say it's schizophrenia in particular?
The main thing I've learned, I think, especially about schizophrenia, is that it comes off worse than any other mental illness, in as much as the newspapers, you know, the headline schizo, psycho, they seem to sort of relish in the really sensational words, and people have got the wrong idea of the condition altogether, and that you're in more danger statistically from the person who's sitting next door to you.
Is that in that way that, say, 2% of murders are committed by people with mental health, say schizophrenia, but then again you turn it on and say, well, 98% aren't?
Exactly. And there's much more murders committed by people who've never had mental health problems. But that's what is hard to get through to the public, because we don't do enough to educate the public. I think there should be training in schools. I say it all the time.
In what way would you want to see training in schools?
Well, training the young people to understand mental illness, and understand that they're not, people with schizophrenia, especially schizophrenia, are not axe-wielding maniacs. So that future generations grow up with the right idea. Because when my son came, he had 5 years in care from the age of 23 to 28, and just before he moved back home again to Grays, 100 residents staged a protest at a school over the road. We don't want the mentally afflicted living near us. They wrote letters to the Gazette, and the night Christian moved into his flat, they smashed every security light around the building, persons unknown.
Do you think there was a recent case of a planning application up in Cromwell Road, not far from us, when 3 people with learning difficulties wanted to move.
Thing.
And there's still a sort of still felt this is not 1872 and Elephant Man's moving
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
still a lot. It comes out very quickly on
what
people,
I found interesting was not long after Christian moved into his flat, a young man stabbed his father to death in the Oaks pub, which is 100 yards away from where he lives, but people weren't writing to the papers because he didn't have a mental illness.
You've written how many books?
5 altogether.
Any more in the pipeline?
Yeah, there is another one in the pipeline. It's going to be called Anyone Who Had a Heart, and it's about my mother's and my sister's. My sister died unfortunately 2 years ago in December, and she'd been in 2 transplant units, Harefield and Papworth, and she'd been ill for about 11 years with angiomyopathy, and she had lupus and she had sugar diabetes, so she had lots of dreadful health problems. And the book will be about some of the experiences she had in hospital and some that my mother had in hospital, and also some other stories about people who've got mental health problems too.
You know, people talk about somebody having a stroke, and there are watch signs you can see of somebody maybe having a stroke. Mm-hmm. Is the same applicable at all to to mental illness or something like schizophrenia in particular?
Well, obviously, yes, it depends how sort of florid the symptoms are. If someone's sort of walking along the street talking to themselves, you know, or talking to voices, then that's a sign, isn't it? With my son, his history teacher noticed that something was going wrong when he was 15 and a half. So he said he's lacking concentration. He keeps going out of the class and coming back in again. His interest in history was sort of diminishing at a very alarming rate. So yes, there would be some signs, but I think it would be the carers that would recognise the most signs with people with mental health problems.
You mentioned CQC, because of the cuts that we have in this, indicating they're doing less inspections rather than more. That must be a concern.
It is a concern, and that's why I wanted to get involved in I'm going up to Birmingham tomorrow and spending a couple of days training, and that's with the Care Quality Commission, and it's in response to the Panorama programme where people with learning difficulties were being badly treated, and something that's very close to my heart, because I think, you know, they need so much care and compassion, and I think for me one of the main reasons that I've got involved with mental health in particular isn't just because of my own problems and my son's, but the fact that people aren't given the same respect as someone who's got a physical illness, and I can't really understand that, because it's just as painful in a different way.